Okay, Rep. Sensamura is here, and she is our first bill author today. Welcome back to the Education Policy Committee. And while you're getting settled, I will move House File 3776 before us. And I understand there's an amendment you'd like to offer.
Yes.
So I will move the A2 amendment, and can you please speak to the A2?
Yes, so the A2 amendment clarifies some of the language around IEP and 504 plans and when students can use these devices as their plans dictate.
Any discussion to the A2 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The A2 amendment is adopted. Representative Sensamura, to your bill.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, Co-Chair Bennett, and committee members. Happy to be before you today to talk about HF 3776, which I really see as a conversation starter about a really important topic, which is screen time and how it impacts our youngest learners. At the legislature over the last couple of years, I think we've had a really robust and rich conversation about cell phones in schools. We've heard a lot from students, from parents, from educators about the impact of cell phones and device and technology use while at school, particularly the impacts of social media on students' mental health. And I think we have made good progress of asking all schools to have clear policies around that and really looking at the way that cell phones are impacting our children's learning. I think we need to have a similar discussion about screen time, even if it is screen time that is directed by a teacher. Currently, our statutes just say that students in a publicly funded, program for preschool or kindergarten can use a tablet if it is basically teacher directed. It needs to have teacher engagement. And I think that right now that is really broad. This issue became important to me because I have a rising kindergartner, and when I was going around looking at both pre-K classes for him and kindergarten classes, I was just really surprised by the number of schools that were having our youngest learners, pre-K and kindergartners, on devices for a portion of the day. And so I started having conversations, with teachers and educators and students about this, and what I heard again and again was we came out of the pandemic. A lot of schools had to invest in one-to-one devices. A lot of teachers had moved part of their curriculum online as they had to when we were in remote instruction. And then when students came back into the school building, we just kind of continued to utilize these devices, some of this online curriculum, without necessarily, I think, giving it the due diligence and thoughtfulness that it needs. There's a lot of research that shows us that the benefits to our youngest learners of screen time do not outweigh some of the negative consequences. Things like delays in development, lack of ability to pay attention in school. I also think we know that if we are having kids on screen, it competes with other important things they could be doing, like going outside, learning social skills, getting physical activity. And so I've also heard from teachers that say, I would like more direction about screen time. I think another concern that I've heard is that sometimes there is curriculum that is mandated by a school or a school district that mandates that teachers have their children on devices for part of a day. And teachers don't necessarily like that because they want to be able to have direction over whether or not their students are on devices. I think there's also concerns around if I'm a parent and I'm sending my kid to school and I want to tell the school I don't want my kid on devices at all. It doesn't really seem like right now there's that option for parents. So I think that, we could have a robust conversation about screen time at all grade levels. I wanted to start with just our youngest learners because I think the evidence is there that they are the ones that are most negatively impacted by screen time. So I have a couple testifiers with me today. I think you also have a note of support for the bill from a physician and look forward to conversations about this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sensamura. We will now move to testimony. Our first testifier today is Amanda Fay, the Executive Director of Technology at Minnetonka Schools, followed by Catherine Myers, Executive Director of Live More, Screen Less. Please proceed to the testifiers table. I will, whenever you're ready, starting with Director Fay, please restate your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Amanda Fay.
Welcome to the committee. Please
Thank you.
proceed.
Hello, Madam Chair and Education Policy Committee members. My name is Amanda Fay. I'm the Executive Director of Technology for Minnetonka Public Schools, a member of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, and the Secretary of the Consortium for School Networking of the Minnesota chapter. I have served in a variety of roles in K-12 public education. As a former, I consider myself forever, English teacher, technology instructional coach, Director of Instructional Technology, and now Executive Director of Technology, working closely with teachers in all of these roles. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. I'm here today to share with you how HF 3776, as currently drafted, would impact Minnesota's public schools. While I and many educators I work closely with fully support research-based monitored screen time for our youngest learners, the current law already effectively addresses concerns regarding unsupervised passive use. It is important that you have the opportunity to hear about the difference between passive screen consumption and intentional, standards-based, monitored, guided learning that involves digital media technology. A blanket prohibition on digital media technology in pre-K and kindergarten would create a direct conflict with existing state mandates and would take away the professional judgment of experienced and knowledgeable teachers across the state. The state currently mandates in the English language arts standards that early educators teach specific technology integrated benchmarks. One example of this is the strand of listening, speaking, viewing, and exchanging ideas. To quote the mandate, students will thoughtfully and safely access, analyze, and create written, oral, and digital content applicable to task, purpose, audience, and discipline. This standard explicitly requires, with prompting and support, students will create an individual or shared multimedia work for a specific purpose. Example, to share lived or imagined experiences, to present information, to entertain, or as artistic expression, considering digital footprint, and to create written, oral, and digital content that communicates knowledge and ideas in a variety of presentation styles with prompting and support. This is one example of one standard. There are more. Both of these benchmarks carry an asterisk indicating direct alignment with state computer science standards. My question to you is, how can we legally require kindergartners to create digital content and learn about and understand a digital footprint while simultaneously banning the digital media they need to accomplish that? Further, to comply with existing one-to-one universal screening requirements of the READ Act, school districts in Minnesota rely on recently state-approved one-to-one adaptive digital screeners. Banning digital media also bans these tools and forces school districts back to square one. Paper assessments may be an option. However, it's important to consider that one-to-one paper administration of screening our students takes hours of valuable instruction time away from the classroom, in addition to added costs for curriculum and staff time. The bill before you also creates an accessibility barrier. By only allowing screen use for students with an individualized family service plan, an individualized education plan, or a 504 plan, this legislation would effectively remove core universal access accommodations meant to be accessible to all. Tools such as speech-to-text, closed captioning, and screen magnification are universal supports that are digital and require student screen use. A teacher should not have to wait for a formal process to provide a temporary bridge for a kindergartner who needs this help now. Additionally, the drafted changes to HF 3776 are an erosion of local control. Our teachers are highly experienced and knowledgeable professionals. They know how to run a classroom, and they know what is best for our children. They are the boots on the ground doing the hard work in the classroom day after day. They know how to balance a tactile, hands-on learning environment with an interactive digital media station to differentiate instruction for an entire class of students at once. A blanket ban of technology use for our youngest learners would remove the accessibility of our state's teachers, the ability of our state's teachers to make professional decisions about the best tools for their students at any given time. And it would remove local school boards' abilities to meet the needs and wants of the constituents of their school districts. Please consider how important it is to trust our teachers. Please keep these decisions at the local level. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next on my list is Catherine Myers, the Executive Director of Live More, Screen Less. Please restate your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Catherine Myers. Good afternoon, Chair Jordan and members of the committee. It is nice to be with you this afternoon. I am the co-founder and executive director of Live More, Screen Less, a Minnesota-based organization. I founded the organization in 2019 after spending 25 years in the classroom as an English teacher.
Oh boy.
Our mission is to promote digital well-being for and with young people. So it is with our mission in mind that I come before you to support House File 3776 and to encourage you to create further legislation that is comprehensive and holistic approach to support the digital well-being of Minnesota students. Students arrive at school already dependent on screens and tablets. According to a Pew 2025 research study, the following age groups own a tablet: under age 2, 3 in 10. From ages 2 to 4, 6 in 10. From ages 5 to 7, 8 in 10. With 9 in 10 reporting that their child watches YouTube, with half of them saying that they watch YouTube daily. 50% of that age group, 5 to 7, engages in gaming, with 3% saying their child in ages 5 to 7 engages with an AI chatbot. I mention this to you to think about what it is that teachers are already dealing with those young learners arriving at school. Screen-free time is essential to child development, as reported by organizations identify the signs of communication disorders and the Screen Time Action Network. They are as follows. Children first learn to make friends as preschoolers. That involves engagement. Too much screen time can slow a child's speech and language development. That impacts learning for the rest of their life. Studies have found that higher screen use in preschoolers can limit growth and development in these areas of their brains that are responsible for attention, memory, and social skills. Children who use screens to calm down may have difficulty managing their emotions. Trained educators understand child development and what screen time might be replacing. Tabor Samuelson, veteran educator with 30 years experience in public schools and a master's in education and administrative credential, says, "Our youngest learners must be in an environment that is rich in print, full of language, and with their peers. This allows them to develop their attention span, encourages oral language development, comprehension, fosters essential social skills, and builds fine motor skills. These foundations of learning are created in a classroom with a credentialed teacher who knows how to adjust their style and curriculum to meet the needs of their students. Tech often interferes with this important work." One guiding question that we ask about technology is, what is screen time replacing? For our early learners, is screen time replacing rich engagement with print, language exchange with peers, ability to develop attention span and to regulate emotions, oral language development, comprehension, fostering social skills, building fine motor skills? If yes, then you have your answer how to vote on this bill. Elementary information specialist Greta Schramm, with a master's in education and 30 years as a public school educator and founder of Pencil Box Solutions, remarked on the development of tech skills. Technology skills can be acquired quickly later in one's education. What young children cannot get back are the early years meant for play, curiosity, conversation, and real-world exploration. Protecting these formative years is essential for healthy development. Limiting technology in pre-K and kindergarten sets children up for success as lifelong learners. Live More, Screen Less first engages with young people in conversation about their tech use and by creating spaces for listening. Let me share with you a few comments high school students have shared when asked, "What would you like younger students to know about technology?" Be careful. Be mindful of your time and what you do. Have more fun than being on your device. Be careful with what you consume online. Be aware of the real world. It's really easy to lose track of the real world. Be aware of the relationships you are making online, but be more aware of your relationships in real life. So much online is meaningless. What I know now, I cherish more my family, my cousins, my friends. Why would I show my device more attention than I do my family? Let's commit to supporting the digital well-being of all learners, the youngest and the oldest, and support them in a call to cherish the real world with real relationships and learning in real time. Technology can wait, childhood cannot. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And with no more public testimony, we will now move to member questions. Members, any discussion to Rep. Sensenmera's bill, starting with Representative Lawrence?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative. I appreciate bringing this conversation forward, and with a starting point at least. I think it's a huge discussion that really needs some major attention. My wife has been a substitute teaching a little bit and sees the challenges of the media that is in classrooms as of right now. I think the biggest part that I look at this is I'm not sure I'm ready for a mandate on schools, which doesn't surprise you at all, but I'm definitely open to having more discussion about how we limit the amount of screen time that children use in the classroom.
Representative Sensenmera, any further discussion? Representative Roach?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this forward. I do respect and appreciate the premise of it. I really do. I think it's, as Rep. Lawrence had said, I think we need to have a broader conversation. I appreciate both the testifiers that I agree with both of them. I really think we need to try to maintain the local control aspect of it, and I'm not necessarily ready to go forward with standing behind it, but I do appreciate the premise of it because I think it's a bigger discussion we need to have.
And before I go to Representative Bierman, I do want to let members know this bill is being laid over so we can continue this conversation, which seems to so far be the dominant ask. Representative Bierman.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. I appreciate the testimony today. Thank you, Rep. Sensenmera. I've been following the debates on K through 8 and high school bell-to-bell bans around the country, and just getting a little bit immersed in this subject, and definitely see the harms that have been out there that are you can track them from not only the United States but other countries on certain years and the effects. But I hadn't really thought too much about pre-K and kindergarten. So I was just wondering, is this a question like when parents are bringing their kids into facilities they're asking for right now is to make sure that they're not there, the devices, or what have you heard?
Yeah,
Representative Sensenmera.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I have done like 5 kindergarten tours in the last year, and I'm surprised every single kindergarten tour parents are asking about this, and it's interesting because I think even a couple of years ago, I think maybe you would hear parents who are asking like, I want my kid to be exposed to technology. How are you teaching them about technology? And so it's interesting that at least in the tours I was in the kindergarten classes, it was parents saying, we don't want screen time, right? Like we want really limited screen time, or we really want to understand exactly how you're using it. I think parents are waking up to this. There was an article in the Star Tribune a couple months ago that was saying, this was, an opinion writer, but she was saying, I find it really troubling. I did a bunch of research and I found that if I wanted to send my kid to a school in Minneapolis that didn't have screen time, I would have to send them to a private Waldorf school that cost $20,000 a year. And so she was kind of raising it as an equity issue of saying, I think a little bit about, my GOP colleagues who talk a lot about parental rights, right? And I think about, do you as a parent to have just a parental right to say, I don't want my kid, maybe I'm not mandating what the whole school does, but my kid, I don't want them on screens. And I think that would obviously pose a lot of, that'd be really hard for schools to do. I totally understand that might not be reasonable, but I think it is certainly something that parents are wanting from what I'm hearing.
Representative Bierman.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I appreciate that, and I kind of assumed it was a little bit disparate as far as what you find. But I agree with you from the short time I've been engaged, I'm running into more parents with young children who want it that way, even up in middle school, they would prefer that now. Or at my coffee hours, I have people wanting our school district to do a bell-to-bell ban. And they tout the advantages of some of their other kids who have been in private schools where there's a bell ban that has been, or a cell phone ban that has been in existence their entire high school, and they just think they get a better education there. So I hope we continue this, well, I know we'll continue this conversation at all levels of education. I'm a grandfather now with a young toddler, and my daughter is like adamant, no screens for that boy when I'm with him. And he's not 2 yet, but we have plenty of toys. Thank you.
Wow, a grandparent that actually does what their adult children tell them to do. That's got to be a first. Next on my list is Representative Green.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. And thank you so much, Representative Sencer-Muro, for bringing this bill. We got a chance to talk about it a little bit this morning. I agree with the sentiment of it, and I do believe in curiosity and play and that important piece. The one thing that I just worry about with that, I'm just throwing it out there, is, when kids are on an IEP and need to use some technology for assistance, and we ban it from everybody else, everybody knows who's on an IEP then. And I just want us to be really careful when we legislate and when we talk about this, because it's, no matter what your age is, it's hard enough to be the kid that gets pulled out. We talk a lot about that with lunch, universal meals, like everybody in. So I'm just throwing that out there. I think it's something that as we talk about this, how do we protect those kids that really need it? And, a lot of times disabilities are invisible. So you don't know what's going on, and people don't, they have a right not to have students know what they're up against. So that's just food for thought.
Representative Sencer-Muro? Great. We will move on to Representative Hill.
Thank you, Chair Jordan, and thank you, Representative Sencer-Muro, for bringing the bill. Thank you to our testifiers. Like Representative Roach, I agree with both of them. And I operate in a high school setting and have for a long time. And this was the first year that the school I work at decided on a bell-to-bell ban. And it was a startling and incredible difference that ban made for our high school students being banned from cell phones, not all devices. And, students were more engaged, students were socializing more. There was noise and laughter in the lunchroom again. It was wonderful. I think it's important that we have this ongoing conversation at all levels, like Representative Bierman says, and look forward to continuing the dialogue and moving this issue forward to the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hill. Representative Fogelman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Sencer-Muro, for bringing this forward. It's something so different that my kids didn't experience. My kids went to K-8 at a Christian day school, so they didn't really have any kind of electronics, and then they went to the high school where they all had iPads and stuff, so that's a big change. But these little guys seeing all the screen time, and I even see from my kids when they had phones when they were probably younger than they should have when they got them, but you live and learn, right? But I appreciate you bringing this. I agree with Representative Green. I agree with Representative Roach. There's a lot of stuff to work through on this, but thank you for bringing it forward.
And closing us out is Vice Chair Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. And I actually just have a couple of questions. I know you've been hearing from us about how we feel about the bill, but I have a couple of questions, and if you can answer or nonpartisan, either way. First of all, can a school currently right now, if they decided to ban cell phones in their district, are they able to do that right now?
Representative Sencer-Muro.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So from my understanding, yes. Because I've looked at some schools' different technology kind of plans. I have not seen a school that has completely banned it, but I've seen, for example, schools saying, I saw one school from 9 to 11, no class can can have a device, kind of trying to move forward with having some device-free time. The barrier that I have heard that would keep like an individual school or teacher from banning it if they wanted to is that sometimes, and I've particularly heard this around some curriculum related to the READ Act, like the curriculum has a component that is not, I think this is, a testifier spoke a little bit to this about the screeners, like there are some things that are just not, right now, we've not figured out how to do them, from what I understand, not with a device. And so that is where kind of maybe an individual school or an individual teacher doesn't have the ability to just say no, but maybe they could work out some kind of variance or something. That's my understanding. I don't know if nonpartisan.
Ms. Para?
Chair Jordan, Representative Mueller. Schools can adopt policies banning cell phones. However, there might need to be exceptions. For example, there may be a student that has like a 504 plan because there's a diabetes monitor on the cell phone. So there might be exceptions where an individual student might still need access to a cell phone.
Representative Mueller?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Jordan. And that was my understanding. I just wanted to make sure, especially when we heard from Representative Hill talk about how Stillwater has chosen to do this. And so, you know, when I hear about technology discussions about schools, I think back to when I was hearing a presentation from Arkansas when they decided they were going to kind of emphasize this idea of making sure we protect our students and making sure that we have really good practices in our schools. And rather than having a top-down mandate, they said, listen, we have a pot of money that will help us, that you tell us how you're gonna do it, and we want to incentivize that innovation. You show us how you want to do it, that fits for your district, that fits for your area, and we'll help you do it. And they had over 75% of their districts choose to do that. And so that's something that I think is for, now, I don't know later how well it continued, I will be very upfront, but that in itself shows me that rather than having some sort of blanket mandate, I wonder if we'd be able to kind of, you know, incentivize some of this type of innovation on what that looks like. My last question, Chair Jordan, and thank you so much for your patience, is I get very nervous when I hear about parents feel uncomfortable about asking to be opted out of technology or certain assignments. As a person who taught English for several decades. We have to, I remember one of the years that we adopted a curriculum that used all of this technology and it was counterproductive. It was horrible. I hated it. And so I chose to do other work around it because I didn't like it at all. But I've also had parents come and talk to me and say, hey, I don't want this to happen here. And so just currently, if a child and a parent does not want their child to use technology, do they still have that right to say, I don't want that to happen, can I opt out of my kiddos for this?
Rep. Sensenmer, would you like me to ask nonpartisan staff
Yes,
about
please.
that? Great, I will turn it over to Ms. Para to try to help us out here.
Chair Jordan, Representative Mueller, I'm not aware of any case law on that or any, it's not a religious, if you're looking sort of a religious situation or within the framework of sort of established rights, I'm not sure where that would fit in.
Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. And so I saw it as more of like a curriculum type thing that you could opt out of a certain, like, I didn't like this assignment type thing, and I've done that for other students as well. So, gosh, as a person who has had to teach in a school where they've banned cell phones and then they just went on their laptops, it's a thing that is really difficult, and it's something that we really need to have a conversation about. The way that it's currently written, I would really like to have more conversation about it, but it's something that I've been really, I myself as a teacher have been something that we've been having a lot of discussion about. So thank you for bringing it forward. I still think that schools can do this already, and so maybe unnecessary as we're talking right now, especially since I think we had legislation just last year or 2 years ago that said that schools had to adopt a technology or cell phone policy. So, I mean, I think we've already started moving in that direction, but really excited to continue that conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Sensenbrenner, any closing remarks?
Thank you for the discussion. I really do believe that our concerns about kids and screens and cell phones and the impact of social media and big tech is a bipartisan issue. And so I look forward to continue work on this. Bottom line, I'm worried about our kids. I think we're all worried about our kids. Our kids are going to, regardless of what happens at school, be more exposed to screens than any other generation before them. And so I think it's really worthwhile to think about what's actually happening in the school building with these devices. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Representative Sensenbrenner. And with that, I will lay the bill over.